individuals, to those individuals who don't conform, to the prescript, that, if you are a boy, this is how you must behave. And if you're a girl, these are the expectations for you in society, right? So you have to be feminine if you're a girl. If you're a boy, you have to show, your masculine traits, right? So we talk about hegemonic masculinities, right? Which represent, these dominant ideas of what it means to be a man, or the behaviors that represent manhood, right? So the examples, they would include the ideas of, heteronormativity, the sense that, everyone is a heterosexual, right? And, overlooking other, sexual orientations. And obviously within a heteronormative society, then, there are expectations in terms of, the different genders that, if you are born, if you're a boy or if you're a girl, the assumption that then, you are heterosexual, and therefore, you are expected to act like a boy, right? So the idea that, for instance, isoga, which, like, you are a woman's man, right? You have to display, this masculine ideals, right? The idea of sexual prowess, risky behaviors, engaging in gang violence, heroism, these are some of the examples that, are promoted within the hegemonic masculinities, right? And as we know that, in practice, not everybody, is able to live up to these ideals of, hegemonic masculinities, right? And it has huge implications, for those men who are, who do not conform to this, right? So, we talk about subordinate masculinities, right? So it's those men that display, feminine attributes. I mean, you would hear often when people say, hey, this one is too soft, or, this one is too gentle, because we assume that, all men have to be tough, all men have to be aggressive, men don't cry, or boys don't cry, right? So it doesn't matter what you do to them, boys are not supposed to show emotion because they need to be tough. And you see this in families, obviously, that, the way we raise boys and girls is always different, right? That, we expect that, that our little boys, they shouldn't cry when they are hurt, and, the impact of that, people have to grow up, suppressing, their emotions, because they have to live up to these ideals of, the hegemonic masculinities, because, a man needs to be tough. And, if you think about the society that we are in now, that, there is so much that is happening in our society, right? There are so many challenges that, humanity is facing, and if you are a human being, obviously, you will be affected emotionally. But then you live in a society that tells you that, you can't be emotional. So, we have to think about, what is the danger of suppressing all these emotions, throughout your lifetime as a human being, right? And then we also have marginalized masculinities, okay? So those are linked to race, class, and ability, that, not all these masculinities are equal, right? So these are some of the masculinities that may not fit into this category, this idea of the dominant masculinities, or those masculinities that are seen as powerful, as influential. So it also has implications, in terms of they also have implications in terms of how men participate in this system, in this patriarchal system, that not everyone is treated equally. But then, because the dominant masculinities are based on a representation of the few, of a certain category, then everybody has to strive towards this ideal. But not everyone can achieve, can participate at this level. I saw a hand. I don't know if we are allowed to take hands now. Tsetse, I'm guided by you.
No, Prof, let's finish. I would encourage the colleague that raised their hand to put in their question in the Q&A section to answer.
Right, thanks. So if you look at, this idea of, a patriarchal society and, and the hegemonic masculinities, that, there's also the idea of a hierarchy, right? So you have, there's a hierarchy, there's an order, and within this hierarchy, obviously, it also prescribes in terms of, which humanity matters the most, who is more deserving in terms of being a human. And, from a decolonial perspective, if you look at, the history, the colonial history in our society in terms of, colonization of societies, that, when the colonizers came here, they came with this hierarchy in terms of humanity, right? And, the person that was at the top in terms of this hierarchy was the white man, and then, the white woman, and so on. And at the bottom was, Black people, right? And so if you look at, the history of colonial violence on Black bodies, for instance, that, that violence that was, that the violence against the Black bodies, the assumption was that, these bodies are not human enough, right? So this hierarchy, this order that we still have within the patriarchal system, it has, huge problems, because then, it still links to these ideas around humanity. And hence, the violence that we are seeing in our society, that, it's also influenced by, by the same hierarchy, that was developed under the colonial system, right? And so, the point I made earlier, that, when you look at this order, in terms of masculinities, that, it's not all men that have power. It's not all men that occupy, the same privileges that the patriarchal system promises them, right? And, so the example of, that a man is a provider, right? A man has a responsibility to provide financially, all the responsibilities that are given to men, but then not all men are employed. And, in an African country like ours, where we have, how the unemployment rate is more than 50% in this country, if not close to 80%, So then if you are defining masculinity based on, access to employment, access to, earning an income and, and being a provider. So, what happens to, all these men, who are struggling financially, who are struggling to access, full-time employment, So that is a big problem, the way we are defining, masculinity, the way we are defining, what it means to be a man. It creates a crisis in our society, it creates a crisis of identity in terms of, how, young boys, define themselves in our society. And, you see it even with, young boys who are still in schools that, they grow up, with these ideas that, they are supposed to provide, for the young girls around them. And, where do they get, the finances, at that age, So we have to think about these ideas that we have in terms of, in terms of masculinity, in terms of, how we define what it is, to be a man. Okay. So, in terms of scholarship, then, feminist and masculine scholars have argued, on the harm. They have argued on the harmful impact of hegemonic masculinities for both women and men, right? I mean, for men, the cause include violence. Violence against others and violence, against self, high-risk behavior, lack of self-care, poor health, and, poor relationships. And then you also have young boys engaging in gang violence, for instance, and performing poorly in schools, Furthermore, men who do not conform to this hegemonic ideals, they are shamed, right? And in our context where, we have huge challenges of mental health issues, this is dangerous because, it's very harmful for their mental health, right? So hegemonic masculinities, encourages men to deny their needs for emotion and intimacy. Okay. As I was saying earlier, that, men are not allowed to feel, they are not allowed to display, their feelings or their emotions, and they can't even talk about feelings, Okay. And so the harmful impact for women, it includes, it includes violence and aggression directed to them, towards them, wage disparities, unequal opportunities, harmful stereotypes, and the responsibility for the main burden of care work, right? Because care work is for the weak. So quite often, this is given to women. Kagiso, am I okay on time? I see you appearing there.
No, unfortunately, you're out of time. Just 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay, so I think let me skip this in terms of the harmful impact on women, because I do want to talk about transforming masculinities and and caring masculinities that so we know we know a lot in terms of the toxic masculinities. I've been talking about hegemonic masculinities, but there's a need to think beyond these toxic masculinities, and talk about, the involvement of women in the work of gender equality and humanizing men, involving men in, in deeper intimacy with women, with children, and deepening, their emotional connections. Okay. So the concept of caring masculinity, therefore, it emphasizes a shift from, the ideals of domination, violence, power, and all of that. And it brings forward the values of care, such as positive emotion, interdependence, because, as human beings in society, we are interdependent, and it's important to, to recognize that, right? So relationality, so the concept brings forward the idea of relationships, right? And it encourages men to participate in projects on gender equality. And care means, relinquishing, patriarchal ideas of manhood, which are promoted under hegemonic masculinities, right? And it calls for us to rethink the ideas of power and how we use that power, right? And using that power to engage in resistance against patriarchal domination and control, which is harmful to, to the whole society. And it requires, change in our environment, so that we can change our humanity and our being. And to care for our humanity, for our environment, and all that is constituted, in our society. Okay, I'll leave it here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Twaedi. We appreciate the academic background on which to base this conversation on the role that we have as the youth in preventing gender-based violence. Thank you so much. Now I'll be inviting the leader of young people through the Community Policing Forum of the South African Police Service, the national chairperson of the Youth Crime Prevention Committee that is working in our to bring change in recently hosted the national conversation with young men around this topic. Sipho Khataza, please come through.
Thank you very much. Am I audible enough?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you very much, program directors. Good morning to colleagues. My name is Sipho Khataza. I'm the national chairperson of the Youth Crime Prevention Committee. So I'm going to try to be very brief in terms of, I think, my input, obviously focusing on the two issues which I was requested to speak on, which is one, what is our structure doing as far as programs that relates to Gbvf, and then our structure in general. The Youth Crime Prevention is an initiative led by the South African Police Service, which is developed under the organized forum called the Community Policing Forum. It is in that forum that the crime prevention strategy was developed. So I think it's important that I give a brief background in terms of our structure. The crime prevention strategy has recognized the two fundamental shifts. The first shift was that policing don't have to be responsive as far as crime is concerned. So this fundamental shift, colleagues, then gave birth to many proactive policing programs where the community, victims, offenders, and possible offenders are consulted in different forums to talk about crime and all forms of crimes, and how we are able to, together as the community and government, combat those crimes. Then the second fundamental shift was the recognition that crime is caused by many social challenges that our people find themselves under, be it political, economical, and other just social challenges. Now, this strategy then gave birth to what is called the Integrated Youth Crime Prevention Strategy, which in the South African Police Service is currently located in the structure that I'm leading nationally. This strategy focuses on the policing needs of young people and what are the necessary interventions needed to make sure that young people don't commit any form of crime, be it Gbvf or other crimes. The Integrated Youth Crime Prevention Strategy also seeks to effectively and efficiently coordinate youth crime prevention initiatives. Now, this is a very important, point, because when you speak about crime prevention, number one, we must accept that crime cuts across all, sectors of our society. You can speak about the rich, the poor, and the middle class. One way or the other, crime has a bearing, factor on their daily lives. Now, on the issues that relates to Gbvf, the president of South Africa, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, in his SONA address, made a very, I think, crucial point that prisons are full of young men. Now, we all know that the population of our country is young in its majority. So when you speak about the age groupings, the different groupings, be it those that are committing murder, those who are doing car hijackings and everything. So young people, takes a majority portion of that. Hence, the president felt that it is important that we have programs that focuses just on young people. Now, the Integrated Youth Crime Prevention Strategy focuses on 5 pillars, which is 1, community policing. The second one would be the moral fiber investment, and later on I'll focus on the programs under that because they speaks to the program of today. The youth empowerment and development. Then the fourth one would be disabled and vulnerable youth empowerment. And lastly, the international relations. Pillar number 2, which is the moral fiber investment, focuses more on what needs to be done to combat Gbvf. Now, the youth crime prevention hosted a youth indaba last year in June in Durban. And part of what young people said we need to focus on is to come up with programs that focuses on men and boys for change. Was to conduct a conference, and I think program director, when you were introducing me, you just highlighted on the program. We must equally host the National Boys Indaba and then come up with programs of mentorship, particularly for boy children. And then the last project was the Project Harmony. which is to conduct outreach programs and mobilize young people against crime through music. Now, the National Youth Crime Prevention hosted its first program under this pillar on the last week of June 2023, under the theme Conversations with Young Men, focusing on Gbvf. This program brought together young men across the country and created a safe space for them to speak freely, unfiltered. This is one of the things that we have noticed, that young men have been boxed in some corner for the longest time, and we're very happy that government and its partners created such a safe space for them to be able to speak freely, particularly on issues of GBV. The most challenging thing is that we speak about, all of this good concept, research and everything, but we don't have sufficient time to bring these young men into confidence, but also understand just their own thinking. Without going into details in terms of the conversations with the young men, the program produced an action plan which will require an intergovernmental departments collaboration in the implementation of the action plan. Then secondly, there was a call which by young men that we must look more scientifically, but in the patterns of the offenders of GBVF, as far as the family values systems are concerned. Because one of the things that we have noticed was the decay in our family values in general, and some of the crimes that are committed as a result of that particular decay. The request was that we ought to look at the difference between the three categories of offenders of GBVF. One, an offender coming from a family that has both parents, an offender coming from a family that is led by only the mother, and then the offender coming from a family with both parents, but with a father that is an abuser. Now, this is to respond to the restoration call of family values that is ought to be led by government and different stakeholders. Many young men acknowledges that our historical ways of doing things, where we would say a child belongs to the village, not only to the parents, those are some of the things that were able to really, build our communities. The decay of that, I think those who stays in townships, your neighbor's child can just go to a Somalian tuck shop, buy a cigarette, smoke in front of old people, and nothing can be done. So the importance of restoring, when we speak about the family values, is not only in the context of the household within the perimeters of your four walls, but also how then do we relate as the community, how do we bring up our kids. So that would be that on that one. Program director, I think I don't want to be long. I'm going to just stop on that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sipho, the chairperson of the National Youth Crime Prevention Steering Committee. a youth division of the National Community Policing Board. And I think it's very important to also hear how we as young people work very closely with government to strengthen their processes. I'm going to try and put up my PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to swiftly go through. Just give me a moment. Are you able to see the presentation? Colleagues? Vanessa, are you able to see the presentation output?
Yes, we can see it.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, colleagues. My name is Matsatsaba Letliani from Agape Youth Movement. I'm going to quickly finish off, and so we can allow a few hands, because I see a few colleagues have raised their hands. On this conversation about the role of young people to fight and prevent gender-based violence, would just be in essence showcasing the work that we as Agape Youth Movement are doing. Agape Youth Movement being a youth-led nonprofit company that provides technical support, and it is an implementing partner to quite a number of government departments on youth matters. And one of our special topics that we aim to activate youth participation and youth agency is on gender-based violence. And our focus is mainly in schools, working with school-going age youth in schools around the country. And our main partner is the Department of Basic Education and the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. And the work that we do is supported by quite a number of local and international development agencies, such as the German Development Corporation's Prevention for Partners for Prevention program, including the Inclusive Violence and Crime Prevention program, the Global Affairs Canada. We work with UNICEF, we work with Adopt a School program. So there's quite a number of partners that are strengthening the work that we are doing. So our focus and main question through the work that we do is how do our learners and children become agents of change on prevention of GBV? How do our learners who are still very young and they're mostly found in schools, how are they able to understand what GBV is? How do they ensure that at that age they don't find themselves moving towards being potential perpetrators of GBV in the future? How do our young girls know where is the line and when and how not to allow people to cross it? So our main approach is activating the leadership agency of these learners so they can lead their own school-based, learner-friendly interventions to activate their peers. So through this thing, one of the main ways is firstly to activate these learners to realize their agency, that they have a role to play, and that they have the capacity, if well supported, to play this role. And we work with the whole school community so that we have a supportive system to these learners in these activities that they're implementing. And we ensure that these learners are given space to lead child-friendly peer education interventions in order to do this. And how do we get here? Colleagues, as I've mentioned, we're attempting to build a human capital of Africa's nearly 1 billion youth, empowering them to be responsible, actively engaged citizens, driving sustainable development. And these are some of the programs that we're implementing that are aiming and assisting us to activate, on one end, learners role in fighting GBV at that young age, because we believe if we're to do early prevention, that is actually the part to focus on. We have the school-related GBV prevention program through the sexual reproductive health and rights education approach, where learners in schools are being activated on concepts of SRHR in order to find linkages and find ways through which GBV in schools can be prevented. Colleagues, we do know that there's a link between GBVF and SRHR. When young girls are in a situation where they understand the issue of SRHR, access to sexual reproductive health services, because GBV is not only perpetrated between person to person, it can also be systemic. So we're able to bring our young girls and our young boys in a position where they're able to defend themselves against GBV, systemic GBV being inflicted upon them. So currently we're implementing this program in 2 provinces, Gauteng and in Mpumalanga, in quite a number of districts, focusing on schools through the learner leadership structure called the Representative Council of Learners, which is the only legitimate learner structure that exists in all public high schools with grade 8 and higher, to participate in school governance processes and also represent the voice of learners. Secondly, we have the National Inclusive Safer Schools program that is based on an approach by Masifunde Learner Development. Is also another NGO with whom we are jointly implementing these programs. They have a change maker model, which is based on a whole school community intervention that activates, provides capacity and supports the role of local Department of Education and school communities at large, prioritizing learners, educators, and community stakeholders in order to run school-based campaigns where learners are dealing with topics such as prevention of bullying, online safety, including prevention of GBV prevention. Thirdly, we're also plugging into the existing structure that I've spoken about, the Representative Council of Learners that exists in every public high school with grade 8 and higher. And we ensure that as our role in supporting Department of Basic Education to ensure that this learner structure is functional, they have GBVF prevention as one of the activities that these learner leaders are implementing in their schools. And it was quite interesting when we went into the schools, we actually found that the learners had the school-related GBV as one of the issues that they wanted to tackle, but they did not have guides, they did not have support, they did not even have a basic understanding of what is it that they're dealing with. So through such processes, we are able to provide capacity on concepts of what is early prevention, what is GBV, what are the types and level of GBV, so that they are able to implement school-based intervention from an informed point of view. And that is in essence a firm foundation on which these young people grow to be advocates of preventing GBV and understanding what GBV is. You'll be shocked in some of the schools that we go into, you find learners not even understanding that certain things that happen in the schools that happen to them, or they see other people doing them, they are classified as school-related GBV. And it is through these eye-opening interventions in our schools that we even are able to get young people to be brought into the side of being champions of GBV prevention. And lastly, we understand that GBV now, if we are riding on the wave of fourth industrial revolution, one deputy minister, Pinky Kekan, in one session that we had, she said, it is no longer like the olden days where if you lock the gates and ensure that your children are in the house, then they're safe, because our children are now online. They're being, recruited into quite a number of things. They're speaking with strangers. So we're having with UNICEF an online child safety program that aims to do two main things: teach children, adolescents, how to be safe on online spaces and how to be responsible on online spaces in order to not find themselves in tricky situation. So these are, in essence, some of the programs that we're currently running nationally in partnership with Department of Basic Education and other partners to try and activate the agency of learners in fighting gender-based violence in their schools from a younger age, because we believe that is one sustainable approach. As the chairperson of the National Youth Crime Prevention Steering Committee has mentioned, our prisons are being filled with young boys, and boy, we can all wonder what would have happened if we had an opportunity to intervene at an early stage where they understood at that stage that this is wrong, this is an alternative approach to masculinity, and we don't have to feel like men only when we behave like this and we objectify women and, you know, just be pulled into the dark pit of being a monster of patriarchy. So colleagues, in essence, this is just showcasing how we as a youth-led and organization full of young people are working together with quite a number of partners. We are also having the privilege to lead the multi-sectoral platform called NGBVF platform of the National Strategic Plan on GBVF, which brings together all role players that are aiming at fighting GBV. And we are in the prevention, the building of social cohesion. And most of the work that we do here is being reported in that platform as a way to show that we are part of the ship that aims at implementing and localizing the National Strategic Plan on GBVF, especially looking at prevention and working with children, utilizing evidence-based approaches and methods in intervening in this regard. I am going to stop sharing my screen. We're left with 4 minutes. I see there's quite a number of hands that are being raised. There are questions that are raised in the Q&A session, and I see Vanessa has been doing a good work in answering them. So in just this 4 minutes, can I kindly, I see a hand there from Leo Alberts Villagazi and this Sister Daikele from the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. Can maybe I allow Leo to quickly just maybe provide a comment or quick one question to any of the panelists, and then we'll try to quickly answer that, and then we'll close the session in the next coming 4 minutes. Thank you very much. Leo? Leo, you've been given the...
Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible here.
I just wanted to say I am very proud to be in this Zoom and in this group. Thank you so much for the effort. I just think that, like, charities begin at home. Many of the boys and men that are doing all this gender-based violence and rape, most of them have been abused. I know of situations. I'm a traditional healer, spiritual healer, and most of them, if you talk to them, they either have been raped or been abused or come out of abusive home. One situation that was really, really painful is, for me, most of the time, irrespective of cultures, when either the mother passed on or the father passed on, institutions or churches make decisions to take the kids away. Maybe the remaining parent can't look after them due to violence, due to lack of funds and situations, no work. But then when they take those kids, sometimes those kids are being raped by the same people that are saying they are saving them. I have a situation in my own family where boys has been taken from their mother and father when they pass on. 2 boys. And they have been raped by the pastor. And one of the boys decided when he was 16, he left because he couldn't handle. Today, he is a gay boy and proud of it, but having hurt. So many of these men in prison are being hurt. I don't say that I agree on the things that they do wrong, but many of them need help. We look at women, I'm a woman, but there should be programs in the prison where these people are also being healed emotionally, spiritually, and physically. Because if they are not healed, they go back out and they do the same thing because they are hurt. So for me, fundamentally, it's very, very important to make programs in the schools as well as in prison for men and for women. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Leo, for that input about some of the difficult situations that our young men face. I mean, just to highlight that the NSP and GBVF is based on 6 pillars, and the first pillar looks at accountability, coordination, and leadership that aims to bring all government departments and stakeholders in fighting GBV. The one that I spoke about is the prevention and rebuilding of social cohesion. The third one, which I believe, the third and fourth pillars, I believe they have a group of role players that are contributing to ensure that they provide healing and protection. It's pillar 3 that looks at justice, safety, and protection, and the pillar 4 that looks at response, care, and support and healing. And I believe there's quite a number also in those pillars of role players that are ensuring that there is that support that is provided to victims of this scourge of GBV, and working with all role players, including the correctional services and other structures. Colleagues, thank you very much. It is 2 minutes past 11. We've made a commitment that by 11 o'clock we'll be closing this session. These are part of ongoing conversations that Agape Youth Movement and the Department of Government Communications and Information Systems have in order to bring to the table these ongoing conversations about some of the things that we as a society need to continue having conversations about. This session is being live streamed on the YouTube account of the Department of Government Communications and Information Systems. And do not be alarmed. We also have colleagues from the media in this session, and they would also want to pull some of the panelists to some radio interviews. So the aim is also there to amplify this messaging around the GBV, prevention of GBVF, so that this conversation does not only come when it's Youth Month, when we're speaking about the role of young people, it only comes when we're celebrating 16 days of activism. These are conversations that need to happen on an ongoing basis. Professor Malohuku Tswaedi, thank you very much for being with us today. And there are colleagues who have requested for a PowerPoint presentation, and they've put their email addresses in the chat section. Vanessa has taken them, so I can confirm that we should be able to share the presentation with them. And thank you very much, Prof, for that eye-opening and insightful presentation about the roots of patriarchy and toxic masculinity, which is the basis of GBV in our country. The chairperson of the National Youth Crime Prevention Steering Committee, Mr. Sipho Ataza, keep on doing the good work and joining hands with the South African Police Service. It's not in a lot of situations where you see or hear of young people working hand in hand with government. In most cases, young people are throwing stones at government, but we appreciate such initiatives that you are leading with an army of young people in all communities working through the Youth Crime Prevention Desk in our schools to bring light into our communities and find GBV. Thank you very much. I now close this session till we meet again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sese. Thank you to the audience as well.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.